And there we go. And if I could ask everybody, and other than Bradley and Simon, to mute, please, so that we don't get background noise. It just makes it hard for other people to hear if there's lots of background noise. So if that's okay, that's brilliant. I'll just go down and just mute a few there. Just helps so that we can hear everybody. That's brilliant. That looks like people have done that. So, good evening, everybody. So my name's Stewart Wall. I'm the regional organiser for East Midlands. Just switch that back over there. And tonight we're going to be looking at what makes a good photo book. We've got with us Bradley Carr and Simon Ciapparra. Would you like to introduce yourselves, guys, just so people can pick you out?
Would you like to go first, Simon?
Thank you, Bradley. I'm Simon Ciapparra, and I'm here to talk to you about my photo book.
Fantastic. Bradley?
Yeah, Brad's fine, by the way. Everyone can call me Brad. So, yeah. Brad Carr. I'm a Mid-Wales-based landscape and nature photographer, and I'm here to talk about my love of trees. I've spent the last 2 years photographing trees as my main subject, along with other things. And I released my zine, Year Amongst Trees, towards the end of this year. So we'll hopefully have some nice conversations about it today.
Yeah. Brilliant, and a beautiful book it is, beautiful zine it is as well. So we've actually got quite a sort of contrast for you tonight. The commonality is both Bradley and Simon's books are absolutely amazing, but we've got Bradley who created a zine, and Simon who created a handmade book, which we'll be talking about. I think you'll be really impressed with both zine and book. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, if I may. Let me just start that there, and we'll go on to share screen. So what you should see in a moment, if somebody can just confirm, Bradley or Simon, you should see.
Yes.
Yep, brilliant. Fantastic. So, as I say, I'm the regional organiser of the East Midlands region of the Royal Photographic Society. And we've kind of been engaged with photo books for some time. If you look at this bottom right-hand photograph, here's some of the photo books that we've made from within the region. Our concept for doing those was always a group of photographers going to the same place on the same day and creating a set of photographs. The first one was Streets in the Sky, Park Hill. Can you see my mouse moving over it?
Yeah. Yes.
And we've been there twice, and as I say, we've just created this set of photographs and then put them into a photo book. And it's just really marvellous to actually see your photographs eventually in a book like that. A couple of years ago, many of you will know, we launched the photo book genre in the distinctions, and that's for photo books rather than images in an album. And there is a difference, and hopefully that will come over during the actual evening. So what makes a great photo book? Well, let's move forward. These are the different elements, and I just want to briefly cover these with you, and then hopefully you'll see these repeated again when we're talking to Bradley and Simon, because I'm going to ask them to talk about their photography, their concept, how they use words and text, and how they designed their books. If you want to find out more about this detail, this photograph on the left-hand side is absolutely fabulous. This is my copy, and you can see how haggard it is now. I spent so long reading it. But Kohlberg really goes into what makes a photo book. So it's well worth, I think they are about £30 new or £35 new, but you might be able to pick up a second-hand one if you've not seen it before. Well worth getting that copy. But what I look for, and what most people look for in a photo book, rather than an album of photographs, and there's nothing wrong with an album of photographs, but a photo book, you're really looking at the photography, how the photography has been created. And when you see Bradley and Simon's photography tonight, I think you'll just be impressed. It's just absolutely marvellous. The concept is really important. it's really important to be able to work out what the photographers are trying to actually tell you or sort of disseminate to you. And again, I think with both Bradley and Simon's books, you'll see what they were trying to say. How do you use? There we go. How do you use words and text in your book? I mean, that's quite an important thing, because words and text are important, but really you don't want them to be more important than the photography. So it's getting that balance. And then you've got the actual design of the book itself. How are you going to sequence the photographs to create a flow, to make your readers want to turn over the page to the next one, but not too quickly? You want them to enjoy what's on that page in the first place. The paper that you use, the actual book design that you use, are you going to put it into a box? How are you going to present it? All these things, I think, are really, really vital. So I hope you've all managed to take all that in. So, Brad, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hope you're
good.
Doing okay there. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody for coming along as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah, good turnout.
It's a great world, the photo book world. I mean, it's an expanding world all the time, and it's great to see how people are creating them. This kind of is like a little agenda, Brad. So just to explain, Brad and Simon, we don't have a rehearsal in East Midlands. We just go for it.
I
kind of think that's best, really, because we hear from the heart then, rather than some sort of thought. So I know you haven't seen these before, but these are the different sort of areas I'd like to look at, which really blend in with that page that I've just shown you. So let's go over to the first section. So Brad, can you tell me a little bit about your photography, and also how your practice, really, how it's all come together, and how the zines fit in with that practice?
Okay, so I should probably start by kind of talking about how I got into photography, I guess. And it was about 6 years ago, I think. I picked up my mobile phone, actually, and started posting some gym workouts to the internet. So I was going on a bit of a transformation journey, like into some bodybuilding. So that was really the first time that I started actually taking pictures with the intention of telling a story. A lot of that was kind of unconscious back then, I guess. I didn't really understand too much about what I was doing. It just felt nice to kind of do something with my life. I was 25 and I had a job that I really didn't like. And I was trying to kind of make something of myself, I guess. So fast forward about 2, maybe 3 years. And I'd been posting consistently for that amount of time, built up quite a following of people who were interested in the stories that I was trying to tell with my physique, but then also, I guess, with my mindset as well, like the personal development journey that I went on, which I think is probably the more important journey for me than the physical, if you like. So I was going out for a walk one day with my friend, and my sister was studying photography in university. So I thought I might as well pick her camera up one day and take it out into the world to see what I could do with it. So my journey kind of pivoted at that point, actually, because I went out and I was taking photos of the landscape instead of myself. And yeah, it just kind of evolved, because everything that I took on that first day came back black or white or blurry. So I started scratching my head, and I'm one of those people who needs to know why. I want to figure things out and how they work. So I guess the first kind of step was that curiosity that led me to pick the camera up and then to find out how to work it. So I found myself on YouTube looking at Nigel Danson and Thomas Heaton videos. So they were the two that kind of helped me along on on the start kind of my journey. And then, I just couldn't stop taking pictures. I was working in an office in electrical wholesale at the time, but every kind of minute was spent thinking about photography, thinking about where my next adventure is going to be on the weekends. So I live about an hour and maybe 15 minutes away from Snowdonia, and every Friday, pretty much every Friday anyway, after work, that would be it. We'd pack the car up, me and a friend, and go off kind of around Snowdonia looking for photos. And then, yeah, it just kind of just didn't stop, kept on going. And then, yeah, I think I initially...
Shall we have a look at your website, Bradley?
Go
and
for
maybe talk us through your website a little bit, yeah? So hopefully this will work. Let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. It's a beautiful website. So do you want to talk us through it just a little bit? I mean, we've got galleries, haven't we? And a journal and a newsletter. Should we go to the galleries and you could talk us through some of the favourite photographs of yours?
Yeah, go for it. If you go to galleries and then portfolio, maybe go on the grid view as well. I've put 2 views on there. So by collection and then top left.
Right. So there it goes. It's just trying to, here we go. So complete portfolio, did you say? Top left?
Portfolio, yeah.
Brilliant. And we won't spend too long on here because hopefully people will go to your website afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Have a really good look. So click on grid, you say, yeah?
Grid's probably the best, yeah.
Okay.
That's
beautiful.
I think somebody just asked the question in the comment section, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think there's been an answer, but maybe we wait until the audience questions, or...
Yeah, we will have questions, but if you want, it's a struggle for me to see the questions once I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, cool.
I can multitask maybe two things, but not 3 things. So, you know, if there's a question that you'd like to answer as we go along, feel free to, Bradley.
Well, I didn't see it because I'm on the mobile device. It only kind of shows me a glimpse of what somebody asked.
Okay.
But I'm happy to wait until afterwards. Yeah.
Brilliant. What I see with your work is I see the work of one person. So there is a voice there coming over, and
that's
I
great.
think to actually create that in just a few years has been quite amazing. How have you gone around? How about doing that? How have you created your style, the Bradley Carr style?
I think that's quite. It's fairly easy. I mean, growing up, we always had in the family home some prints of an artist, but called, I think, Henry H. Parker, and I feel like they have really influenced the style of my photos with that kind of maybe painterly feel. And especially if you look on the top left now, you've got middle left, the stream, the trickling stream.
Yep.
Fading out into the kind of misty nothingness, if you like. And his paintings kind of give off that feel. I think he painted one up in Scotland, which is it's a beautiful kind of scene of, you know, mountainous backdrop and a lake in the foreground. So I feel like they've been quite heavily influencing throughout my life, I guess. Even if I think about it, you know, like the subconscious. I mean, I've looked at those prints every day since I've been a boy. So definitely played a part.
There is a marvelous book called Inspired by Art, and of course, I've done that for many years. That's brilliant. Let's go back to here. So, I really think the strength of your work here is just beautiful, and as you say, that sort of painterly feel really comes over in the zine. So fabulous.
Thank you very much.
So let's move on to the next slide, which is where I first saw your book on Biblioscapes, and if anybody's never seen Biblioscapes, it's really worth having a look there. It's Ewan's photo books, but it's biblioscapes.com, and this is where I saw Bradley's book. There is a 45-minute interview on there with Bradley, in conversation with Ewan. So if you don't get enough of Brad tonight, you can do more on Biblioscapes. I just want to flip over to there just to show you what it kind of looks like. And this is Biblioscapes. So what Ewan does, and he does this with all the books, is he creates a little flip through, which I'm just going to play for you. Move that up just a little bit. We'll start turning in a moment. I say, there it goes. So this is Ewan just flipping through the book, and you can see that the pages and the words and whatever, and I could see snippets when I was looking at it. I could see these snippets, and I'll talk about this in a moment. And the photographs look beautiful, but it was the words that I really wanted to better read, Bradley, and experience the book in more detail. So let's just play this through. I think it lasts for about a minute. Yep, we're almost there now. It just gives you a really good taste of the book. And what Ewan also includes, which is really useful, is a link. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. There's a link here to the website and any Instagram and Twitter of that author. So it gives you a taste and really develops an interest. If I just go to his library, you can see there's absolutely loads and loads of books that Ewan has put on there. So it's a really, really good resource if you're interested in developing your own photo book engagement. So that's Biblioscapes. And what I want to do is just expand on my experience of your book a little bit, Bradley, because that's where I saw it. I kind of saw these words but couldn't read them closely enough. And the same evening I ordered a copy. I then received an email confirming that, and then an email from yourself saying it was on its way. And I think it arrived by the Tuesday, so you were very quick getting it out. Of course, if you're up in a mountain somewhere, it might take a little bit longer.
Yeah, there's no pigeons I can send it with up there.
Yeah. It arrived with a lovely postcard, handwritten, addressed to myself, which was a really nice touch. I thought that was lovely. And then the book itself, the book arrived, I think around about 10. Obviously postmen differ, but mine arrived about 10 o'clock. I was in the middle of doing something, but I immediately stopped and just sat there and read every word in it. And I just felt as I read the book that I was alongside you. Taken with these pictures.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to kind of convey. Yeah,
and that really came over. And I just want to read a couple of things, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
And there's loads and loads. I could spend all evening reading the book to you, but on this page here, we talk about your nan.
Yeah.
You thank your nan, and we all should thank our nans. I think nans are lovely, aren't they? I have to thank my nan to thank. Sorry, I'll start again. I have my nan to thank for much of my 2021 portfolio. It was on Boxing Day of 2020 that I was showing her some of my photographs from an autumn visit to the Lake District in Scotland. Whilst I was focusing on my use of light, technical qualities, and composition, she was drawing attention to all of the things that she was imagining within each of the scenes. A photograph of Ashness Bridge brought memories of children playing by the stream. In a photograph of Old Man of Storr, she was focused on the different faces that she could see within the extraordinary rock formations. When we talk about a photo book creating an experience, that's exactly what you're saying your book did, or your photographs did for your nan. And this is what I felt looking through the book. There were lots and lots of other things which I just stopped and pondered on. I love this little line here. This is you talking or writing in your book. I walked innocently into one of Wales' most beautiful ancient woodlands, yielding my flask filled with coffee, books and camera. I mean, there's some absolutely beautiful words in there. Did you write all the words, Brad, or did you?
Yeah,
collaborate. That's fantastic. It really feels as though you wrote them. So absolutely beautiful. I wanted to ask you about some of the books. I forget where I saw this. Was this on your website now? And Guy Tao is just marvellous, isn't he? How did Guy Tao inspire you? How did the book More Than a Rock? What did you take from that book?
I think it's the depth of his thoughts more so than his photos, and that's taken nothing away from his photographs, by the way, because they are unique and beautiful in their own right. But yeah, I picked up a copy probably at the end of 2021, I think, and it was actually the first book that I bought the first photo book. I mean, I'm still relatively new in my photography journey, so I'm limited on what I bought, but that just immediately just resonated with me. I think his reflective nature, I think I saw a lot of my own kind of thought process in what I read in some of his, I mean, they're essays, aren't they? They're not just kind of reflections, they're full on essays in More Than a Rock. And there's probably around 40 or 50 of them. So yeah, I mean, I was just, like you say, kind of with him in those moments when I read his book. So yeah, definitely played a big part in my own.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm just reading The Interior Landscape at the moment. It's his new book that is being out. It's already out. I think you can order it direct from him, but it comes out on Amazon, the physical copy, in January.
Right.
I bought the digital version of it. This is where he's really building on this, where he's talking about how what you see affects what you see inside. So the interior landscape is your mind. So it's real guy tell stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, this I went a little bit out of sync there. So talking about my experience, these were the words that I could just make out from the biblioscape.
Oh yeah.
These are the words that really tempted me to order the book, as well as the photography, by the way. It was beautiful photography.
Thank you.
We've spoken about the photography, we've spoken about the book. How do you actually go about creating the photography technically, Brad? And also, as you're creating it, what's going through your mind?
Not a great deal, actually, is going through my mind. I think it's the mindfulness of being outdoors in nature that draws me to photography. So it is that feeling of the flow state, like that kind of nothing else matters but how you're setting your camera up, what you're putting in your frame. There's complete emptiness, I guess. I'm connecting a lot with my subjects when I'm there. I don't kind of just go aimlessly to a place. A lot of these photos have been created after kind of lots of visits to these woodlands or lakes or something like that. So yeah, I do sometimes think about maybe some previous experiences, I guess I don't really want to call them failures, but when a shot doesn't quite turn out how you'd like. So sometimes I'll ponder those and find a sense of gratitude, I guess, for the fact that I have now got the conditions that I would like, and it kind of leaves me feeling like thankful that those failures, quote unquote, happened. So how do you create them technically? Do you mean as in settings or what?
Yeah, so I guess light is quite important to you. Do you have a favourite sort of direction for the light?
Sure. Yeah, you can probably see in lots of those photos, I shoot into the light quite regularly, or maybe across the light, but still kind of into it. So if you imagine the light source of the sun at 45 degrees, there's one photograph, the breaking of morning, and that's shot with the sun. And that's probably my favorite, one of my favorite photographs. That's shot with the sun at 45 degrees. So you have that lovely transition of warm to cool tones, especially when you've got a cool autumn or winter's morning and everything looks blue, but you get that warmth of the sun. Those kinds of scenes immediately draw my eyes. Anything that has a contrasting color, I've realized that color plays a huge part in my photography. So like a bluish kind of background with some orange leaves, they tend to catch my eyes. Yeah.
And once you've seen that sort of light, the meter on your camera or your handheld meter will give you a setting, but do you override that? Is there do you have a preferred, do you overexpose or underexpose, or?
It will very much depend. In the woodland, I tend to overexpose ever so slightly, just so it picks up some details in the trunks of trees. Normally, you can see in radiance there that I've got on the screen that's slightly exposed to the right, just so it maintains that detail. But I tend to use live view quite often, actually. Obviously, in the winter, it's no good because it absolutely destroys your battery. But I'll use live view when I can, and then obviously you've got the live histogram, because I shoot on a 5D Mark IV, so it's it's got a lot of technical kind of help with histograms and whatnot. So yeah, that's my preferred shooting method.
Fantastic, thank you. So what we've been talking about so far is a photo book is no good without great photography. So it's about thinking about the photography, it's about creating the photography, and then we come to the actual putting it together in the actual book. And we've already spoken about the words in your book, which are marvellous. Where do they come from, Brad, and how do they engage with the photographs that you put in? So
they actually come.
One thing before you start.
Sorry. Yeah.
So what I did notice, I've got to say this, but I thought there was a great link with that, the story about your nan, because the photograph you called royalty.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's just a coincidence or whether
it is coincidental. Yeah, they were the royal colours. I thought they reminded me of something maybe Henry VIII would wear, or something like a nice jacket, warm jacket. But yeah, nothing to do with my nan on that instance.
Okay. So yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you. So where'd your words come from, and how do they engage with the photographs?
So I tend to write a lot throughout the year. I have a bit of a journaling practice where I sit down in the mornings. I've been off the boil a lot recently, actually, because I've been really focused on my photography. But I'll sit down with my coffee in the mornings and just write. Sometimes, what I write is meaningless, but occasionally something I think is worthwhile will come out, and it can depend on maybe what I've been doing throughout the day before, or whatever I'm kind of going through at that period of my life. Sometimes they'll link with my photos, particularly if I take my notepad and pen outdoors with me, which I do like to do. There's a poem I wrote in there, actually, that was written in one of the woodlands I was sat in, or it was kind of loosely written, and then I tailored it when I got back home and sat and really meditated with it. So there's a lot of essays that I sit and write in my journal that I then kind of think that would work with that photo. So they're not all intentionally written for the photos, if you like.
Right. Okay. And then when you come to actually put them with the photographs, is there any connection in the book? Do you connect the words with the pictures for the book, or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there'll be say what I've written in a morning would then be kind of reflected on and maybe tailored towards a photo. So I'll take the basis of what I've written and then tweak it slightly to suit certain photos. So I guess they're not all written directly from the heart about each photo. Some of them are written maybe a little bit more logically and then kind of linked afterwards, if you like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Brilliant. And then we come on to the big one, and this is the concept. A concept for a book is really, really important. This is where I think, and most people think, the difference between this book of individual photographs and the photo book comes in. What is your concept? How do you develop the concept for your books, or this book, Bradley?
So that one, so it's really marking the first year that I decided photography was going to be my future. I was at a bit of a crossroads. Like I said, I was kind of doing a bit of personal training beforehand. So I had personal training in one hand, photography in the other. And I think it was around the end of 2020, 2021 that I thought photography is my thing. So with this book, it kind of, marks the start of my serious journey, if you like. And I wanted to kind of reflect a little bit on how I found it, my love for nature, my love for photos, but really take people outdoors with me. Like you said, you felt like you were walking along. That's music to my ears, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. Life is, it's a journey for all of us. And I think those kind of conversations with my nan kind of got me thinking about where I am on my own, because obviously I'm going to be at that stage one day. So yeah, it just kind of made me think about where I was, where I'm going and where I am now. So yeah, that's my kind of idea with the book.
Brilliant. Well, it certainly comes through very, very clearly. And we've spoken about the narrative, which you've got a strong narrative here, the story of your first year. The sequencing, how did you work out the sequencing? Because the book certainly flows. Did you create that in a particular way?
Yeah, they're all seasonal, which helps. It starts in winter, January through to December, pretty much. There's a few that I've tweaked here and there to kind of adjust things as I see necessary. Maybe I think it bounces between Mid Wales and Snowdonia in one instance, where actually the other series came first, but I wanted to kind of it was to suit the narrative that I was telling, actually, that I rearranged the order. So yeah, sorry, have I gone off on a tangent there?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think you've kind of answered it, because I think what's important in a book is so the reader, the viewer, can actually see a sequence so that it flows. And what you're talking about is going through the year, through the seasons. Sure. And that shows in the book.
Yeah, there's also, within each kind of season, there's also like mini collections as well. So from a certain place, there's 3 or 4 from a lovely lake in Snowdonia that are the birch trees beside the lake. So I've collated those together to kind of tell the story of those birch trees together, maybe kind of give an idea of, how you can photograph the same subject in a different light and a different angle to tell a completely different story, if you like. So yeah, within each place there's also mini collections too.
Yeah, and I think this is really vital, so that the next page builds on the previous pages. I think if a photo book, you suddenly get to a point and you think, hang on a minute, I've seen that 10 pages back, and then you go back to look at it, the sequence has been broken. Mm. Unless that's done for a purpose, and of course that could be the case. So I think the sequencing really works, and what you've basically done is you put together your walk through the trees throughout the year, through the different seasons, looking at the different trees, and that's created a way of sequencing the book, which really comes over quite clearly for anybody who sees that. And then onto the actual design, and often the design will fit in with the concept. Why did you go for a zine rather than a photo book, a sort of hardback book, for example?
It's fairly straightforward, actually, and cost. I wanted to keep this first. It was actually a trial, if you like, or not a trial, but it's the prequel, I guess, to my first full photo book, which I'm kind of working on at the moment. So I thought this would be a great way to practice with it and yeah, see how it was received before I proceed with something that I think is a bit more full and with a bit more longevity, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think zines are marvelous because, as you say, the cost is affordable. I can't remember, was it £10 to?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's probably a little bit of postage as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot of money to purchase, and what you're then able to do is disseminate your work to a wider audience, I guess.
Sure.
So
well, it's actually stocked in a couple of bookshops now as well.
Fabulous.
Because they really like the story alongside it. So there's some copies in Aberystwyth and some copies in my local bookshop as well. So it reaches all kinds of people from different walks of life, not just photographers, which I find to be quite humbling, actually.
Yeah, I mean, well, one of those books that I showed you at the beginning that we've done in East Midlands, the Park Hill book, the main interest was architects in that, as well as photographers, but architects and designers, because of the actual structure. It was brutalist architecture, and the development was based on Le Corbusier's utopian sort of style of living. So people who aren't photographers, why are they interested in your book? Is it just the beauty of the photographs, or another reason, would you say?
Yeah, well, the people in the bookshop, they like the photos, but it seems to be the words that go alongside that people are interested in there. I actually made friends with the bookshop owner, who is doing her best at promoting my words, and then the photos are the to accompany it as well.
How interesting. That really is useful. So we've sort of spoken about the design and the sequencing. What about the other elements in the book? Do you know what? I haven't noticed whether you use page numbers. I don't think you do you?
No, I didn't.
No. And
there was no reason whatsoever behind that, by the way. It was just I just didn't think to even bother putting page numbers in. I wanted to kind of leave it for the photos and the words. Yeah.
Do you know what, Bradley? I don't think you need page numbers. No. I think people automatically always assume that they do, but if there isn't a purpose for them, why bother? Why bother? I really don't feel, because your book starts on the first page and just flows through to the end. Why would anybody need to go to page 17, for example, or 28 or whatever? Unless, I suppose you were saying, have a look at the picture of enchanted land on page so and so.
True, yeah. But then it gives them more excuse to look through the other pictures, doesn't it, by trying to find it? So
it does.
Maybe there's genius behind my methods after all.
Yeah,
absolutely natural genius. Thank
Yeah.
you. You've got a your text is. I've been looking at the white screen actually. Is it sort of just off browny sort of colour? The text. What colour font?
No, it's black.
It's black, is it? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow.
Should be black. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's quite gentle black, isn't it? It's not.
I don't know actually.
Oh, interesting.
I think it's the quality of the paper, perhaps.
Let me have a look in my copy to see.
You could be right, Simon.
It might well be actually, because it's quite small in the zine, isn't it? Maybe
It's
that.
small, but it's easily readable. I think it's probably because I've never actually looked for what colour font it is, and I think it's because I'm looking at these beautiful browns in the colour photographs.
Yeah. The front text is grey. The A Year Amongst Trees text and my name is grey, a very dark grey.
Yeah.
So maybe that. I don't know if that affects anything.
No, but I think the important thing about the text for me is that it doesn't intrude on the photographs.
Yeah, I wanted to purposely give certain photos that wider spread with the name on, kind of out the way on beside the photos, and they're the ones that I feel like perhaps particularly hold a bit more kind of quality and meaning, if you like.
Definitely. And I think the actual rhythm of the book, the design, the rhythm, where you get a bulk of text, and then you get some photographs, and then you get another smaller amount of text, and then a bulk of text, really is interesting because it stops the reader, or it stopped me, to then read and stop looking through the photograph.
I mean, I'm a contemplative person myself, and I feel like I wanted to, bring that across and give the reader a chance to contemplate and reflect on the photos by kind of doing that as well.
Yeah, I think that definitely worked on me. I definitely stopped and then I'd think about what you'd written, which really comes over very, very well.
Thank you.
So that final bit on there, the design that brings everything together, which is really vital. I think we've just spoken about that, the rhythm, the text, the words, the photographs, absolutely works superb. So
thank you very much.
So what I'd like to do now is just invite you, Brad, if you've got anything that really we haven't covered that you think is vital to put over to the audience. And I'm going to stop sharing in a moment, and then if it's okay with you, we can go into 5 minutes of question time from the audience before we move over onto Simon, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is there anything that we haven't covered, do you think, Brad, on your book? It's quite important.
Don't believe so, no. You put on the screen there, what did I learn from making the zine? That's a big one for me, actually, because I think that it's going to really change the way that I do photography moving forward. I probably got caught up a little bit in playing the social media game for the first part of my journey, and obviously social media is hugely important for anybody who wants to kind of pursue photography now. But I feel like my work is definitely centered around creating collections with the intention now of using them for future books. There's the most recent series is those winter birch trees that you loaded up on my website just a moment ago, and that's actually kind of forming a micro series at the moment. And there's also a collection up in Snowdonia that really kind of deformed old weathered birch trees as well. So I'm trying to forward think now, and just the whole process of, I mean, sitting and doing this is just amazing. Like, I wouldn't have got this opportunity if I kind of didn't make the book. So just making me think a lot differently about my photography now, and contributing it maybe towards a bigger purpose as well.
It's about that sort of creating projects, isn't it?
Sure. And giving somebody something from it. Like you said, you walked with me through the Welsh woodlands, which is an amazing. I've given you an experience there. So
you have absolutely that experience. A few questions. I'd like to just sort of talk about this zine concept. So Chris has asked about what is a zine. Well, zines actually started really, or I first heard of zines where students were printing their own books. So they were using Xerox printers to create zines. This is going back to the 70s. So that's where I think the term originates from. But a zine, if I can just show you on this book here, they tend to be stapled, which I think yours is, yeah. Can get perfect bound ones. They tend to be soft back, like this is. And really, the photo book market has used this term zine to talk. Brad already mentioned that cost-wise, they tend to be a lot lower cost than a thicker photo book, what they call photo books. Do you mind if I say where you got it printed?
Sure, no, that's fine.
So Mixam is where Brad got it printed, which I think is MIXAM.
Yes, MIXAM. That's right. Yeah.
Let me just see if it's yeah, it's Mixam. Just going to see if it's a co-UK. So it's Mixam, MIXAM, M for mother.co.uk. It's a really interesting website. They've got a lot of resources on there. So spend a bit of time looking. They'll show you the difference between the zines, the photo books, the hardback books. It's a really good website.
Sure.
And the quality.
Yeah, I was really happy with the quality. The paper is just beautiful. It's almost a matte kind of textured internal paper, which complements those kind of painterly images. And the front page is like I think it's a 370 GSM silk paper with a laminate touch. You can select an option, which is, gives it a little bit more of a premium feel.
Yes, and it definitely does feel premium. So well worth doing that. So we've answered that one. How did you decide on the length of the zine? I guess it means the pages in it, do you, Ian? How did you decide on how many pages to have in it?
It was just how it turned out, actually. I didn't purposely want it to be a certain number of pages. It was a case of I collated my portfolio of images down to, I believe there's 32 photographs from the year in there. So it was a case of, adding some text on top of those, and it just so happened that it turned out to be around 48, I think, finished pages.
And that's quite interesting because my experience of it is that it took me, because I was reading every word, and I've read it through 3 times, Brad, and each time I discovered things that I didn't read the previous time. It took me a good hour to go through the book. A 48-page book with just photographs, maybe a few words at the front, might take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So those words really added to that.
Yeah. Was that because of the reflection after each piece of writing?
It was, yeah, it was. Because I kept stopping to think about the words and what they meant to me. So you're absolutely right. So number of pages. ISBN number, I don't think you've got an ISBN number on there, have you?
No.
So just if people are wondering what an ISBN number is, they're quite expensive individually. I forget the individual price, but you can buy about 10 of them for about £150. It might have gone up a little bit. And an ISBN number is really a registration number. So if you put an ISBN number on your book, you potentially might get the 5 libraries contact you asking for copies of them. And if you were to sell them or want to sell them through places like Waterstones, they will expect you to have an ISBN number on them. It's a cataloguing number. Some people use them, some people don't. So I hope that answers that question. So I think we've been through all the questions aimed at yourself in the meeting chat. Has anybody else got any questions they would like to ask of Brad verbally?
Right, it was a question from Simon. Brad, how did you feel when you finished? How did you feel when they came back? And did it create a full stop for you?
No, it didn't create a full stop because I always live with, you know, what's next. I'm one of those people who can't sit back and think, right, that's that done.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I was excited to put them out into the world and to see what people thought of them. So when I got my hands on the order, you know, I was straight into the book, and I was looking at the quality and just reading. I mean, I was reading my own words again, just because I had something real in my hands, and it was the, you know, first time, bar a few prints and whatnot. It's the first time I'd had a real product out there. But I mean, yeah, as I said, I think in the chat before, that I was already thinking of, you know, my first full photo book when I released this zine. In my head, I don't know if you're the same, Simon, but in my head I've got, you know, 10 things on the go at once. I think it's the nature of being a creative mind, which is great because we're never bored. Sometimes it can get on top of us, right? But, initial excitement, a little bit of anxiety around,
of course.
You know, I'd put my heart and soul into it for a while, and some of the words as well. That was because I was being more vulnerable than I've ever been before with some of the things that I wrote, especially, you know, reflecting back to my childhood as well, which I don't often do with people, and it actually normally makes me clam up when I talk about that. So when I kind of read those, I was a little bit like, oh, do I want to, you know? But it was too late because it was printed and it was going out there. So.
And it's a corollary to that. Do you feel that now you've created this thing and you've gifted it unto the universe, although people have got to buy it, but it's a gift from Brad unto the universe, that the creative energy that has brought to you is the springboard into the next adventure in your book?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's definitely kind of given me a new lease of life with photography, for sure. It kind of makes me think, well, you know, what else is possible? I talk to my brother quite often, and he regularly thinks and says that I'm on the journey to write some full books as well. So by kind of, you know, releasing this and with it being stocked in a couple of bookshops as well, that kind of makes me think, wow, like what are the possibilities? And you know, in the job I worked previously, there were so many limits, and you know, I guess you adopt those upon yourself, and you know, you think maybe you limit your own potential subconsciously. So I think it kind of gave me a feeling of the shackles are off, if you like. Where can this life go?
And I think they're really good questions, Simon. I think the sort of zine, the book, it's a passport, isn't it? You could walk into Joe Cornish's gallery with that book, and it would immediately start to look through it, and you could connect with some amazing people. Emma's quite rightly said that a lot of independent bookshops will ask for an ISBN number, but you've said, Brad, that you've managed to connect with a few bookstores, but bookshops, just small bookshops, I guess they're
independents,
independents,
but they didn't seem to question.
No, so it depends, I guess, how it's all set up.
Maybe it will come, but I'll cross that bridge as and when.
Yeah, brilliant. Tina's asked if you intended to submit it for an RPS distinction. I don't think you remember the RPS, are you, Bradley?
No, I'm not actually, but I have been meaning to recently join something. So yeah, I certainly will. Yeah. So I could submit it to what? Sorry.
Oh well, you'll hear about this in a moment, because Simon's book was submitted to a distinction with the Royal Photographic Society.
Right.
So East Midlands is a region of the Royal Photographic Society. So you don't have to be a member to submit a book or a zine for a distinction with the RPS. But if you're offered the distinction, then you are required to join, because it is a level of membership, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I think Brad, that was marvelous. I hope that's really sort of explains people or open their eyes to the power of creating a project and then developing a book, a zine around that project to disseminate that work. So I'd like to thank you Greatly for joining us. I hope you'll stay with us for the rest of the.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to stay on. Yeah, of course.
And if anybody thinks of any questions that they haven't asked you, maybe at the end, they could ask them then. So,
sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Stuart. I really appreciate it, and for your lovely words about my zine as well.
No problem. And thank you for creating the zine. It was
welcome.
Thank you.
More to come.
Thank you. Brilliant.
I'll just mute myself now. Okay.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was great, and that was a zine. Now we're going to. I'm going to close that chat for a moment. Sorry, somebody just asked a question. If you print using Blurb, they add. Yes, they do an ISBN number for free. As they are also the publishing organisation. You're absolutely right, Rob. You don't have to have a Blurb ISBN number. You can get them to put your own ISBN number on if you have one. It's just going to sell them, isn't it? I think. Richard says he doesn't think it's free. No, I think it's a charge, possibly. Have a look at the website. So we're going to move over.
Sorry?
We're going to move over to Simon now. And Simon created something a little bit different to a zine. So let me go back to sharing my screen again, and we can have a look at, start looking at Simon's. Are we looking at your...
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go through something fairly similar. We're going to ask Simon about the book, who is his photographer, and then after that, I think Simon's going to sort of show you around his dining room table. So let's move on to the first screen. So Simon, like Brad described his photography and his practice, who are you as a photographer, and how do you bring all your photography into your practice? Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Well, my photography has been in two halves, really, hugely separated by 40 years, really. I was lucky enough to win a Sunday Telegraph colour supplement competition when I was 17 and won a Canon AE1, which a beautiful, beautiful thing. I had no idea how to use it, except I enjoyed clicking away and winding the dials and produced some fun shots. And to cut a long story short, after a year in the States as a roadie at the age of 19 with Eric Clapton, I had 160 rolls of film and all the backstage gossip on film. Arrived home to my parents' house in Twickenham in London, and the same night I got home, the house was robbed, my camera was stolen, all my film was stolen, all my souvenirs from a year in America was stolen, and I never had a camera from that moment until I was 60. For my 60th birthday, I bought myself a camera and thought, I'm going to learn how to use this properly this time, and proceeded to do so, really. A year and a half after I bought that camera, I was lucky enough to have got my LRPS, and I joined a camera club in Norwich. And I found that this was a way for me to participate in creation. This was a way to not just document where I was and what I was doing, but share what I saw and how I saw it. And how I see it. I still do. I'm an avid Facebooker. I post to over 160 groups on Facebook regularly. I have a following from Japan to Venezuela to Ukraine, and you name it, there are people all over the world who seemingly eagerly wait for my next drop on Facebook. So that's been a glorious thing. The first camera I bought was a Sony, and it was immensely complicated. So I then inherited some dosh from my dad, and I decided that as children will always find their way into their parents' wallets whenever a little bit of extra cash lands in them, I would spend it quickly. So I spent that quickly and bought myself a very, very nice, very simple camera. And that changed my practice entirely. I only shoot manual, I shoot in RAW. I don't look at histograms, I look at live view. I choose an ISO that is my favorite. Focal length, I have a zoom which is a 24-90. It's a Leica SL zoom on a Leica SL2. And I choose my shutter speed and my f-stops because of what I'm seeing in live view in the viewfinder. More often than not, I put it in a monochrome mode, which is a fiction, really. It's just what I get on the screen, as opposed to what the camera is recording. And that allows me complete freedom. The camera isn't dictating to me anything. It is just it's a tin box with a jam jar on the front, and I point it at what I want to point it at and manipulate it until it's showing me what I want to show other people.
Fabulous. And what sort of camera is it you're using, Simon?
A Leica SL2.
Yeah. I just wanted you to say that so that I could refer to as Leica SL2 as a, what did you say, with a jam jar on the front?
Yeah, it's a tin box with a jam jar on the front. So, the simplicity, simplicity in cameras costs an awful lot of money. You can get point and shoot that it's just horrendously complicated. But simplicity and accuracy and all of those sort of things cost a lot of money. And I would never have been able to do it if my dad hadn't left me some dosh. So it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I grabbed it with both hands. So I think that says about me and photography. It's my way of participating in creation on a daily basis. It is my joy. It's the reason I get up in the mornings, is to take pictures. Excuse me.
Brilliant. So it's like that sort of passport into worlds that you wouldn't normally be sort of walking in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I very often ignore keep out private, and when I encounter people, wave my camera very prominently, and it seems to have given me a license to tread where one shouldn't.
Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, so where did your making of your photo book start?
Well, this is what you're looking at now is paper making, and 30 years ago I discovered a method of making paper whilst I was working in the Caribbean, and I made paper from bamboo because it was a weed and there was lots of water. And I literally read a paragraph or two in a book about bamboo paper and thought, we can do that. And lo and behold, we did. And the whole reason for doing so was it was about environmental protection and utilizing natural resources in a sustainable way, creating high value, low volume product at the farm gate, so that you're only moving the highest value off the mountainsides. You're not moving bulk, you're moving small volumes, but you've created all the value where it grew.
Yeah.
Simon,
I don't know whether you've got an external mic and whether have you got a mic attached onto your jumper?
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, we were just getting some rustling noise.
Sorry, that's my jumper. Okay, what you're looking at in these pictures is how I make paper. So the center photograph is a plant called Formium, a flax, New Zealand flax, which I grow in the garden. The picture on the right is it boiling with caustic soda and rainwater. And the picture on the left is the resultant boiled material, and then the resultant boiled material blended. And the creamy stuff that you're seeing in the white pail is cellulose fibre, which is the purest form of cellulose you can get. And all paper is made from cellulose fibre. It doesn't matter whether it's wood pulp, except for there's a new stone paper which is made in Germany, which is hideous. It's basically a polymer. But so making the paper was what I wanted to create my book from. So the notion was that I will make paper from the plants in my environment and photograph the plants in my environment and print the pictures of the plants on the paper that they made. So it was a self-portrait. You could hold the skeletal remnants of the plant and look at the actuality at the same time. And this also encapsulated something that I'm very fond of, which is the concept of enso, which is in English, it's a Japanese concept, a Zen concept, but in English it translates, loosely speaking, to an incomplete circle. And the notion of the incomplete circle for me in this instance was that a book on a table or in a bookshelf is a dead, lifeless thing. It only gains life when somebody picks it up and opens it and uses their eyes and their fingers to hold it. And we've got so used to screens and mobile phones and tellies and all the rest of it, computers, that we actually relate to an image or a story or something when we're holding it. In Brad's zine, I'm sure when you hold it, your fingertips are engaged as well as your mind and your eyes. Absolutely. So it's a much deeper engagement happens.
We're moving a little bit into the concept.
Sorry. Yeah. So this is this. Yeah. Sorry, Stuart.
I just want to throw in a little bit of a caveat. If making a handmade photo book was a sport, I think making your own paper is an extreme sport. So don't anybody sit there thinking, well, I'm not going to make a handmade book if I've got to make a paper. I think what you're doing is really quite distinctive and very unusual. I'm not sure whether there's that many people who make their own paper. So I think this is just amazing. And on the next screen, we can actually see you doing it. So
yeah. So this is the whole process. So if you look, let me try and do it in sort of order, right? So if you look in the center right image, I've literally about to place the decal back on the mold and go back into the water. In the far right image, I've gone into the vat, which has a slurry of the paper fibres. The mold and the decal are coming out. In the image above it, the decal has come off. That's the edge piece go round. And you can see that there is a sheet of wet paper. Immediately to the above it, so immediately to the left of that, you can see me couching, and couching is turning out this wet sheet of paper onto a piece of cloth, which has a texture that I've carefully chosen. Bottom, immediately underneath that, you can see that I'm just about to turn it out. The one to the left of that is the wet paper, that's the one, couched onto what is called a post. And I build up 50 or 60 sheets of paper, and then I take them outside and use my father-in-law's old tractor jack in a press frame that I made and squeeze the water out of it. And then I've invented and made a way of drying paper so that it stays flat. And that's the key to making paper, is keeping it flat. Otherwise I can show, in a little while, I'll show you some that isn't flat. Okay. So therein lies the entire process of making the paper.
Fantastic. So this is really kind of like a membrane that puts the pattern on the paper, does it?
Yes, and separates the sheets. So that you build a sandwich of 100 sheets. So you've got, literally 101 sheets of cloth and 100 sheets of paper between them.
Fantastic. Superb. So it really gives you an idea of the process that you're starting off with to make the paper.
Yeah. And the choice of plants, obviously, that involved a huge amount of experimentation to find the plants that it would work with. I once made paper for a Prince of Wales Trust thing with a bunch of what we would have called very politically incorrectly Borstal boys when I was a kid. But I made paper of leeks, out of leeks. For the Prince of Wales in Wales, and that was great fun because they all drew on it, wrote on it, and created a book out of paper that was made from leeks and presented it to him, and then he presented the centre with a whacking great check, and it ran for another year.
Oh, fantastic. What a great story. Well done. So,
Right.
I just want to talk about, again, my experience. And I'm going to ask two of the audience to join in with me here, Richard Hall and Fiona McGowan, because this was submitted for an RPS fellowship. And that was the first time I'd seen the book. And it was just amazing. Fiona, are you there? Are you there?
I am, Stewart. Yeah, hi.
You were with me on that assessment. Can you describe your experience of seeing this book for the first time?
Oh, it was amazing. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, when you first looked at it, it was obviously in a box, beautiful box that Simon had prepared. You opened the box, lifted the book out, and just a combination of things, coming back to what was said earlier about the tactile, just the touch, both of the cover of the book and also the pages, obviously the paper that Simon has just explained how he made, the images, and also the design of the book. You can get a bit of an idea from looking at the screen here, the way that it opened. But I thought it was just, I mean, it was just an exquisite book, and you felt very privileged to actually be able to look at it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Fiona. And also we've got Richard with us tonight, Richard Hall. If you can unmute, please, Richard. And if you can add to what Fiona has just said, I think if I remember rightly, when the assessment is happening, the assessors write some feedback, which then, if a book unfortunately isn't successful, develops into that feedback. I don't. Richard, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't think you actually wrote anything, did you?
Yeah, well, this was an unusual book in that normally one writes all sorts of notes of feedback for the candidate if it's not successful. And I didn't bother writing a single word. That it was the easiest decision I think that we'd ever made to award a fellowship for it, and it was unanimous, and it was just exquisite, really, absolutely exquisite. It would be difficult to scale up to sell, you know, a big number of the books, but for assessment purposes, it was just exquisite, really.
Well, I think I've worked that out now, Richard. What we're going to do is auction Simon's book off, and that will enable the Royal Photographic Society to run for another year. Is that okay, Simon?
Yeah, that's okay with me.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. And thank you, Fiona. That was marvellous. So, as both Fiona and Richard said, Simon, it was just an amazing book, and I think we'll talk about the concept a little bit more in a moment. But I think what was really, it's hard to say this, but the concept was kind of so simple. You'd made this paper out of the fibres of the photographs of the plants that you'd actually photographed, and then created this book. And then you just did so much more about that really powerful, simple concept. So thank you, Fiona and Richard, and it's just beautiful. So we've spoken about the photography. Let's have a look at some of it. Can you talk us through these images here, please, Simon?
Certainly. Well, paper is made by the interlocking of the fibres, and this is done in 3 dimensions in a water bath, and they squish down. So how do I represent that in photographs was my dilemma, and it just suddenly came to me, multiple exposures. So the top left photograph is banana leaves, and there are actually 4 images there, one on top of the other, photoshopped effectively and compressed into a single image. There was also a dilemma because I wanted these images to be not of the plants, but about the plants, and that was a very conscious decision. How do I make images about things? Because we all take images that are of things, but atmosphere and all the rest of it is what it is, an aboutness, and the aboutness came about in that way, in creating multiple exposures, but in color, again, they were still of. They weren't about. So by making them monochrome, they became literally about light and no light. And paper and ink traditionally are white and black. So it's a match made in heaven in my mind. It literally coalesced in a very short while into what you see before you. So you have banana top left, you have ginkgo. Right now, all of these fibers impart a different quality to the paper, and all of these fibers contribute to the paper in a different way. The banana and immediately beneath it, that's bamboo, create long fibers with a lot of flexibility and strength, tensile strength in this direction, and prevent tearing of the paper. The ginkgo top right provides a very, very fine downy-like fibers, like eiderdown's inner feathers that keep them warm. But that creates a surface, which is a very, very fine surface on the paper. And the grasses there, in the bottom right, those grasses actually, that particular one didn't provide anything from the paper because it just went to mush that had nothing to it. But the seeds gave me the size for the paper. So you have to size paper, stopping bleeding and fizzing out through the paper. So you want crisp, sharp images because after all, this is a photographic distinction, and the photographs are what people are asking you for first. Bookmaking and books are a secondary issue to the photographs. That's the means by which they're being presented. So the paper had to have a quality about it that allowed the images to be as good as they can be. And on my own paper, they are no different in terms of photographic quality to on a high gloss photo speed or whoever's Hannah Müller, whoever's paper. I've managed to get that same quality in my paper, and that took an awful lot of experimentation. But the aboutness, I think, is probably the most important thing to say at this stage about the photographs in the book, because I hope and pray that all the assessors and everybody who looks at it don't feel that they're just looking at something, that it's telling them something back, and you're receiving information through your fingertips because you're holding the thing. And the only thing I bought for the entire book was the cloth, the ink, the thread, and the glue.
Wow.
Everything else I made by hand.
Fantastic. I mean, the photography was or is absolutely amazing in the book, and there's a great variety as you go through. We'll talk about the concept and the design in a moment, but you did sort of group some of the images together on the photograph.
Yeah.
The reason why you sort of put them into these categories, did that sort of develop into the sequence and the design of the book?
Yes, again, this is very conscious decision making in the assemblage of the book, and there are effectively 7 chapters of 4 images in each chapter, and those 4 images actually give you everything that plant gave to the book in a very, very real sense. If you look at the seeds in the top left group of 4, all those seeds, there's oats in the bottom right, wild grasses in the other 3 images, all of those seeds gave me a very gloopy gelatinous starch, like very thick gravy, really. Okay. And that provided not the means of sticking the fibers together, but they created a surface upon which to print. The raindrops, well, it was rainwater that I gathered because I didn't want to turn on the tap to make paper, so it was rainwater was gathered, etc. The bamboo, well, the rain on the bamboo is obvious, and the images themselves were created over time. So all the bamboo photographs, for example, were probably 3 seasons in the shooting. the banana, that was all shot in. There's a friend 3 doors down who has banana plants in his garden. So those are all, nothing is from more than 10 miles away from home.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, the photography really does come over powerfully, and hopefully next year, Andy Moore is hoping to have an event where people can actually go and see the photo books, and this one is something that I think really needs to be seen in the flesh, so to speak. Coming on to words, Simon, how did you develop the words for your book, and how did you?
Well, in a lot of senses, Stuart, you're culpable for this, with your ginkgo haikus. I had thought long and hard about the words. I wrote a foreword, which was fairly straightforward. It was a distillation of the supporting evidence. But each chapter, apart from a heading, needed something. So actually, for me, these haiku, and they're not strictly speaking haiku because they don't have the syllabic discipline, but they are an emotional response from me unto that set of images and the plants therein. And there is, within all of these poems, there is, they actually speak to an image specifically. So the carpet of a curtain call is the final image in that ginkgo series. And it is literally a carpet of leaves on the floor. But because of their balletic shape, it felt like a sort of Swan Lake curtain call, etc.
Fabulous. I mean, it really does come across beautifully. And I read a few of them, and they were absolutely stunning. And it is this sort of how the photograph inspires you to put these words together, and that really does flow very beautifully. Thank you. So I think we've spoken about the concept and the design quite extensively. So I don't want to go repeat ourselves, but what we'll do first is you created this little video. Which we'll run through. It starts a little bit dark, so don't panic about your screens, and then it sort of brightens up. But we'll come back to this image again at the end, because here we can see how your book did actually open up. But let's just play through this video, and hopefully it will run okay. Brilliant. And that's obviously some of your favourite music, is it, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. The sound of silence.
Yeah. So what we had there, was that Simon, was it, when I was playing it, Simon?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, was it?
Don't worry.
I obviously forgot to click the icon, but you can see how the book, as you open it up, it's not just turning the pages over, it's actually turning a page and then opening up that little chapter, which is what you're referring to. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I switch my screen around and show you? Or do you want to do that later on?
Well, what I would suggest we do then is stop sharing for a moment, so that people can. So let me stop sharing, and let me just move it over to speaker view, so that on the at least on the recording we get the full view that you're going to show us.
Yeah. Is that working for you? Can you see my table?
We can. Yeah.
Right. So the box is called a clamshell box, and it works like that. So it has two halves and folds out. The book comprises of end papers. Now these end papers are a multiple exposure shot of everything that's in the book. So all 28 images appear in the end paper. Now the grey paper is made from an old pair of pajamas, cotton pajamas, and recycled misprints form the speckly bits. The title page, somebody asked me in questions just now about the font, and it's called Zapatino. It's not handwritten, but it's as close as I could get to look like it was handwritten. So the book works like this, and then the forward, I won't read you the forward because it's a bit long to speak to, but I'll open this section. And the notion of the book was it's got to be a discovery. You can only, if you flick through the book, you'll only see one image and a bit of a title page. But then if you open it, you get two images and the verse. And this one is bananas, sun-cut leaves, checkered shadowed spines and veins, slashed to dappled shade. And then you open it up fully and you can look at it in 3 dimensions. So not only have you had to handle it, you've had an exploration within each chapter. So you're not just opening and turning pages, you explore each chapter, and plants unfold as they grow. And I wanted to have something of that nature in the book. So literally it progresses, and then between each chapter there is this grey, 18% grey, quite deliberately. And this is about having a pause, having negative space within the totality, so that you're refreshing your tactile and visual senses before you enter into the next image. And this is the flax, which is what you saw being boiled. And each chapter works in exactly the same way. So you have a discovery of a poem, and then what the plant is, its constituents, its fibres, it's the way they crisscross and dapple in the sun and move, and so on. So it gets very arty-farty, for want of a better expression, but everything is deliberate. All of these stages are absolutely deliberate. So bamboo works, well, you've seen the bamboo ones already, but they work in the same way. So you have to engage with it to appreciate it. You can't just flick through and have a quick zap. You have to stop and pause. So I think that's probably enough of that. But then you get to a point where, how did you arrive at that, Simon? Well, there's a lot of experimentation. This is the actual paper that comprises the book, and this is the proof of concept. And you'll notice it didn't work quite the same. And it didn't work quite the same because I didn't get the hinge sizes quite right. So it's a bit lumpy. So learning the hinge sizes was crucial. Then the fonts, obviously the size of the font matters in the book. So I started looking at whacking great print, but decided actually a much more intimate experience could be had if that was smaller. And the paper itself, this is the size of the paper, etc. And I would probably get one double-page spread out of a single sheet. So possibly 2 prints out of each sheet of paper that I made. And that's what I mean about it being flat, that it's actually quite flat and got quite stiffness and a rigidity to it. But there was a lot of work as to what sort of book to make. Now, these are very often termed artists' books, and an artist might make 3 or 4, and that's it. But it started out as a concept like this, where this is a hand-stitched book of signatures, they're called, which are 8 folded pages, and you can see the decal edges. So this was an early trial, but this had no uniqueness to it. You know, Common Book of Prayer, made in the 18th century, would look exactly like this without any print on it. Then I got overcomplicated, and this was my next thought. Do something like this. But this was far too overcomplicated for the purposes of a distinction, although it's pretty and a lot of fun, and has recently developed into this.
Yeah, amazing.
Now these graphic images I create, and it's a perfect vehicle for them. So it's horses for courses. And then the latest iteration is this one, which is called liminality. And liminality is about transition. So there's a transition through shapes and what have you. And this whole series of 50 images for liminality. Liminality is a state of transition from one stage to the next. But there was a Fake or Fortune program with Fiona Bruce that looked at Nichols images. And this is the latest methodology of presenting my work in 3 dimensions. So this is a flat image with 3 folds and 1 cut, which creates a 3-dimensionality.
Fantastic, Simon. I think when you said too complicated for distinction, when I sat down with Andy Moore and Peter Hayes, and we started talking about this photo book genre, it had to be photography led, but actually what we were trying to do was create a genre which would still engage the members of the Royal Photographic Society, but also create new exciting vistas for photography. So the one which opened out like a Rubik's Cube type thing, if you could develop something like that with photography, which was clearly photography, why not? So it doesn't have to be traditional photo book, and your submission certainly wasn't. So thank you for showing us those. I'm just going to go back to gallery view now, and whoops, we've said that. So I won't share the screen again, but that final slide, so I'm like Brad's. So what did you learn from making, or what have you learned from making your photo books? You've already shown us what you've been doing after, but can you tell us about the future of Simon Ciapparra's photography and photo book making?
Well, I'm very mindful that environmental protection has been my life's work, and by creating high value, low volume, one-off or limited edition series of things is the route for me going forward. And that this 3-dimensionality that books have, that photos on the wall or photos on the screen don't have, is the ability for photographs to be carried about the place and looked at it in different lights, in different shadows, by candlelight, by moonlight, shared with a friend, etc. And in a way that photographs cannot be, in a very real sense, individual pictures. They can be shared on a screen and zapped all over Facebook and stuff like that, and I thoroughly enjoy that. But there's an impermanence there. And if you think that we still have photographs from 150 years ago that still exist and can still be handled and enjoyed, although white gloves and whatnot are going to be. But the longevity of books and images in that form is really intriguing.
Yeah.
We have inks. I mean, I print all my own work. I do everything in-house. The dining room table is where everything's created. That's where it happens. So the archival inks now, they say they've got a 300-year life. Well, I'm not going to be around to prove it.
Right.
One hopes that they do.
Yeah.
So I think that the photography continuum is, I've just been really enjoying the liminality series and creating those, which is both in the iPad and by photographing rainbow spectrums on the living room wall.
Brilliant.
Combining them. But equally, I have the three-dimensional stuff, and I have tunnel books in my mind's eye that are journeys very similar to Brad's through the woodland, but down hollow ways, which are these cavernous roads that have been droving roads for millennia, and so on. So
I guess it's sort of pushing the boundaries of your creativity and your creative mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. You mentioned printing. Mike asks, were the images printed using an inkjet printer? And if so, what did you coat the paper with, if you did?
Well, that's what I described, the grain in the size, making the size out of the grains that I reaped. It literally is I size it in the pulp. So this is in the water bath into which I make the paper. So every fibre is coated in the size, and that prevents the ink from bleeding. If one were to want to do something similar with a watercolor paper that was not sized, you could size it with polycell, wallpaper paste, in a very low solution, and drying it, dipping it twice and drying it twice. You can use a PVA in very light solution.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. Which sort of inkjet printer did you use, Simon? Do you mind saying?
It's an Epson PC 600.
600, yeah.
And I don't use Epson inks. I use replenishable inks.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so Shirley asked, thank you for that, Simon. So Shirley asked whether the words included need to be your own for a distinction. No, I mean, it's it's got to be your overall concept, Shirley, but no, if you want to use somebody else's words, then I'm pretty certain that's okay. What font did you use, Simon? You did tell us earlier on.
The font in the book is called Zapatino.
Okay, and presumably you printed that with the inkjet printer onto the paper.
Yeah, and it's one of the Apple fonts in Pages, etc.
Yeah, fantastic. So Tina, you asked about the statement of intent. So this is very much about distinctions. We've experimented with supporting evidence, using the term supporting evidence with the photo book genre, but I think it might change statement of intent. And your statement of intent can be part of the book, but it's can be separate. You did a separate one, didn't you, Simon?
Yes, I've presented a separate statement of intent and a forward in the book, which was a synopsis of the statement of intent. I think for the type of book that I wanted to present, I didn't want words to overpower the images. But I wanted them to be able to be carried by the reader in his or her mind's eye into the book. So short, pithy, and pertinent was my watchwords, because I wanted those words to stick there. And again, the poems echoed everything that I'd said in the supporting evidence.
Yeah, and that really came over in the book. The concept, the design, the feel of the book, the whole thing sort of just came out at you. And then the photography was just so powerful. And then these words just really fed into the photography and the whole thing. So it was beautifully put together. So thank you, Simon. Thank you. Now, I think we've been through all the questions in the chat. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask of Simon verbally? If you'd like to unmute and ask those questions now. Well, I think we must have covered it all very thoroughly. One last call for any questions.
Can you hear me? It's Ian Price.
Ian, yeah, I can only just.
Yeah, I'm interested in how Simon went about doing the binding of the book as well, because I can see it's all hand stitched.
That's right. Yeah. Can you say that again, please?
I think Ian, you did actually ask in the chat room. Well, I must have missed that one. How did you bind the book? How did you?
Okay, I can again show you. I can switch my camera around and best speak to that by showing you.
Yeah.
So lower the screen. So the spine is called an articulated spine, which a lot of photo books will have. Can you see that?
Okay.
It sort of opens up with a tunnel in between. Each chapter was stitched onto a tape and then glued up afterwards. So I can find that one here. The stitching happened down this joint here. So that's where the book is hinged, thus. So each section was then stitched to all the other sections with the Coptic stitch binding onto a tape. And then the cover is, I'll let all my secrets out here. The cover is actually 9 sheets of paper. So the cardboard is 9 sheets laminated together. The articulated spine is actually three sheets laminated together. So all of the paper, it's all the same material. And even the box was laminated sheets of paper.
Yeah, brilliant. So just on that book, I mean, a very simple way of putting this in is almost where you're creating almost like a set of individual mini books and then stitching them all together. Would that be correct?
Yes, absolutely. And within that, the hinge mechanism is kind of crucial to, in Steve Jobs' term, design is not just how it looks, it's how it works. So every hinge between the sections, and these are 2 pieces laminated together. So I've got the title, banana or grass or whatever, then the image on the back of it. But between those 2 images is a hinge. And the depth of that hinge is different for every element of the book. So I had to learn to create each hinge individually for each section, because handmade paper is not uniformly thick. So one sheet might be thicker than the other. Try and get it uniformly thick in each individual sheet. But one sheet to the next is not going to be uniform.
Fantastic. Thank you. We've gone a little bit over time, which I knew we were going to, Simon. So I think people maybe have other things they need to get on. Yeah. But I think it's been absolutely amazing. I just want to say that what you've seen with Simon's book is it really is extreme sport of making photo books. I think when we viewed them, I think the word perfect was mentioned at some point. You know, this is the top end of the scale that we're seeing tonight. So don't let it put anybody off thinking there's no way I would ever be able to engage with that level of handmade books. There are lots and lots of different levels. Let me just have a look. Bunshri is saying, how much is the book? The $1 million question, Simon. How much is your book?
Well, there are 2 in existence at the moment. There's a library in Seattle that is so far offering me $8,000 to make them one. Wow. There's a chap in Germany who wants one, and he wants the one that the RPS have got at the moment, so it would have to be in excess of that. I will make them to order, but it's basically how long's a piece of string? I mean, the first one, and I should tell everybody actually, the first one that was submitted was returned to me with an advisory, or what do they call it? What you remind me?
Feedback.
You returned it to me because it didn't pass muster for the fellowship first time round on some technical printing issues, and so I had to make a second one.
Yeah.
And resubmit. I had to resubmit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's every. I can promise you, Simon. Every assessor was absolutely heartbroken on that first.
Yeah. But for me, the joy is in the making. So actually, once I bent my head around it, to have to do it again better was a joy.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt. It wasn't. It was painful for a week, but actually right and just that it was a resubmission, because the first one wasn't as perfect as I could achieve. The second one was.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And it, in all honesty, we wouldn't want fellowships if it was easy to do.
No, you're quite right. Thank you for that. Thank you. So that I think that was absolutely amazing, and I'd like to thank you awfully for sort of explaining the whole process in total transparency, Simon. It's been absolutely amazing, and I'm sure that you could actually talk for many, many more hours about your journey putting this book together.
Simon the paper ball.
Yeah. Brad, I'd like to thank you as well. I think what we've seen tonight, hopefully everybody has seen two completely different journeys, but the commonality is the attention to detail, the absolutely getting lost in the process, the whole exciting journey. So thank you, Brad.
Thank you for having me. And Simon, that was brilliant. I was blown away actually by how much love and care you've put into producing that. It's like you said, polar opposites really in terms of our approaches to making the books, but the theme is the same. But
the content is.
I just wonder whether, are we losing that sense of craftsmanship in this day and age? Like you've crafted everything. You collected rainwater. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, but I think it's the classic old men in sheds.
You do yourself down, Simon. It was absolutely marvelous. I just want to give a little shout out for Bradley. If you want to walk around Wales with Bradley, he does do workshops over there. So have a look on his website. I meant to mention that earlier for you, Bradley.
Yeah, the newsletter is probably the place to go if you want to come and see some little hidden corners of Wales. Then newsletters. I think somebody's already mentioned they signed up to my newsletter, which would be the best way. Yeah.
Happy days. Thank you. So and thank you ever so much for everybody for joining us. Brad, have you got any final words you'd like to say to everybody?
No, just thank you very much for coming and listening to me rabbit on about trees for an hour. It's
Happy
really,
days. Thank you.
Humbling. Thank you.
Simon, any last words?
Just thank you for organising this, Stuart, and the opportunity to share my little piece of creation with everybody else.
You're very welcome. And that just leaves me to say happy Christmas to everybody. I hope you have a fantastic time, and let's look forward to 2023.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for the invite as well. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And if we could just all unmute and just give Brad and Simon a round of applause.
Thank you.
Superb. Everybody have a safe trip home. I hope you haven't got very far to travel. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. Just save chat. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.